Okay, so today we're going to be working on my new engine head that I'm refurbishing for my 1994 Honda Accord Wagon. I know that the old one, the F22B2 engine head, the non-VTEC one, is full of carbon, so figured why not upgrade it to a VTEC and get rid of all the carbon at the same time. So I've got all of the equipment for that, and I'll be showing y'all how to do all that as it comes. So here I've got all my valves laid out on this board. I've got them labeled by cylinder. I have my engine head on a flat metal table, and I'm getting ready to put my valve stem seals on. Now there's a bunch of different ways that you can do this. Most important thing though is to make sure that these retainers for the springs are on before you put valve stem seal on. I wasted $20 one time on valve stem seals because in between projects and distractions I forgot to put these on before the valve stem seals. Always make sure put your retainers on first, then your valve stem seals, then your spring, and then your keepers. F series and D series use the same part number for valve stem seals. I prefer these. These are made by Apex. They're made in Taiwan, Republic of China on the back of it. Part number AVS1003. These are very nice, and they're used on both sides as well. So you don't have to worry about which side you put on what. They're all the same. You can go cheaper if you're not picky, but I like these. I've used them on 2 vehicles so far, and they've been perfect. So I will be using them on mine. I'm going to be using a cheap backyard strategy for the springs. I'm going to be using zip ties to compress them while I put them on. Got a multi-tool with a cutter to cut the zip ties when I need to. And I've got some WD-40 for lubing the seals and putting them on. I've used WD-40 and put seals on before, and I never had one walk off or, you know, blow out or anything. So that's what I'm going to be doing. You always want to make sure that these little grooves where the seals sit are very clean and that there's nothing in them and all traces of old seal are out of them. That way it seals correctly. To seat the seals without damaging them, I use a deep 10mm socket. Okay, so let's get started. I'm going to go ahead and crack these open. Pull the first one out. Always look over the seals, make sure that they're all good and there's nothing off with them. Blow them out if they've got any packaging left hanging around on them. Now what we're going to do is I'm just going to give it a quick spray with some WD-40. You want to take your finger, or at least I do. I take my finger and run it around where it seats. Then you want to take it, sit it on there. You want to take your deep well socket and put it over. And then just kind of evenly push down. You'll feel it click, most of the time you'll feel it click twice, which is it seating in the seal and in the grooves. Alright, that one's seated. I'll do the same thing again. Spray my finger, rub it around the post and the grooves, spray the seal, put the seal on there, take a 10mm, put it on there, push down. Alright. You always look at it from the side to make sure that it's sitting straight and it's not tilted. And then you know that you're good to go. I'll get a close-up. So here's a close-up look at the seals. You can see from the side that they're straight. They're both pointing at the same angle. To get a close-up on the socket, they just line up perfectly. It's like the perfect size to push them on without damaging them. So I said before pushing them on that you'll get kind of like 2 bumps or clicks or whatever out of them from seating. Depending on the different socket that you use, you'll kind of feel it differently. With this one, it's more of like a squish and then a click. But yeah, we're just going to keep doing this and may time lapse this. Yeah. If you're like me and you find yourself facing distractions, always be sure to go back and take a look. If you're like just a little bit through, you get called away from your work, make sure to look at the back of the seal and make sure it's straight before you move on. Now, as one could see, the two on the right over here are absolutely straight. But if we look at this one, it's cocked to the left a little bit. I just got distracted, and if I'd have left that alone, that would have been a failure point. That would have popped off when the engine was running. Always, always quadruple check every time you got to put one of these on. All of these are nice and straight and happy. They're not tilted to the left or right or wobbling or off in any way, shape, or form. So now it's time to move on to the next side. I'm just going to go back over, make sure they feel straight, and make sure that we're all good. And we are all good. So our next thing will be we're going to flip this back around. And this is the exhaust side. Now it's on the springs and retainers. So we got the retainers on the bottom, have springs. These are my exhaust springs. They fit right there. Then you have these retainers and little keepers that go inside retainers. What I'll do, since I don't have a tiny little expensive spring compressor, I have zip ties. Always be careful, wear eye protection. I'm not responsible for anybody doing anything stupid and springing themselves in the face with these. So what we do with the zip ties, so what you'll want to do is you'll want to get the zip tie in at an angle and try to get it up and out of another area of spring. Is basically what you're trying to do. So I take the very end, the zip tie, where it's thin, and bend it down where it's a hook, which tends to make it easier because then it actually wants to go out a particular way, like this. So we're going to take that and we'll zip tie this down. So we'll start one on this side and take another one. Do the same with it. You want to try to do this as evenly as possible. That's why I didn't jack down on one side first. So then we want to take a tool or a pair of pliers or whatever you've got. I'm going to get them kind of even distance away from each other. And just pull them tight. Like that. Cut off the excess. And then that way when you put your valve in, these will be compressed. Now let's put this first valve in. Now this is on the exhaust side on number 4. You always want to check these ports. Always make sure there's nothing in any of this. We're going to need oil. Number 4 on exhaust. This guy. So we're going to take this valve, oil the hell out of it, and we're going to put it in the bore. Okay. And you're going to want to take a rag or something that will hold the valve in place. Turn it over where it's not going to go anywhere. Now if you notice, that's really close to where the valve sticks up. So where this is now, this is very close to where the valve sticks up compared to before. The spring would be like all the way up here and the valve would be down in the bottom. This makes it to where you can practically press the keepers onto the valve. That's what we're about to do. Now for this, a good 5/8 socket or spark plug socket will work perfect for this. Spark plug socket with an extension, 5/8, and you want to get your keepers out. So you want your 2 keepers, they're keyways or whatever you want to call them. These little guys, and this one. You'll put that guy on. You put 2 of these. One on each side of each other. And you want the taper to face down towards the valve. When you put it together, it will look like this before you pop it on there. And then what we're going to do is we're going to compress that, and it's going to click onto the valve, and then we'll cut the zip ties off. Okay, so 5/8 spark plug socket. Put it on there. Push down. Won't get it. Normally, what you can, since I have a towel under here, you take this and very lightly bump it with a rubber mallet and it'll seat it. However, the mallet that I used in the last video to take this apart is broken. And I'm staying out of public and out of town, and I can't just go to a Dollar Tree and go pick up another one. Not doing that. Let me tighten up this zip tie a little bit. That's almost going on by hand now. Oh, got it. And there it is. What we got to do is cut these zip ties. This goes a whole lot easier if you have a rubber mallet, because you can just kind of lightly bump it and it will do its own work. So I'm going to cut these zip ties off and we'll see what it looks like. Zip tie is cut. There's what it looks like. Perfect. And when you cut these, if you can reach them, cut them and then pull them out by this piece, and that way they come out in one big piece. You don't have to fish anything out. The other thing is, if you can't get in there to cut them for some reason, you can take them and kind of twist them a little bit and they'll pop off. So I'm going to go through and do all these because it's going to take longer than it would have with my mallet to do these, because I'm going to have to do them all by hand instead of using the rubber mallet to pop the keepers back on. Because usually the hard part's just zip tying the spring, getting it set on there, and then popping it on there, and then that's it. But this is going to be a little bit more for me. Okay, about to start on the intake valves. Always be very careful, because when you're going to have to turn this around the other way to make it easier to get to, because you'll put the valves on the top, make sure to switch your diagram around on where the valves go, whatever you're keeping your valves on. So you make sure that you note a note on your holder which side's the distributor side, which side's the camshaft side, the cam gear side. That way you don't get them mixed up, or you can turn your diagram around if you need to. That's what I did, because I have a board that has them labeled on it. I just switched it backwards and switched the head over to where it matches. Okay, this side should be easier than the other ones. See if I can get it by hand. Almost. Yeah, intake valves are a lot easier than exhaust valves, which is why I did the exhaust valves first. Yeah, that one's almost in. I just had to wiggle it with my hand the right way. Yep. Cool. Yeah, these should be a breeze. If that's how easy the first one went, my God. Yeah, this is gonna be a whole lot nicer on this side. One side. And got the other. That one went super easy. And these intake valves are so much easier than the exhaust valves. These exhaust valves have a lot of tension put on them. God, awesome. Okay, so we got all of them installed. Intake valves were way easier because it takes less strength to compress these. So all of that went together way faster. So next step's going to be cleaning up our lost motion assemblies, getting them ready, and getting our rocker arm assembly and camshaft ready to put in. So the only downside to doing it this way without a tool and with zip ties is, one, it's slightly harder, but if you don't have money for a tool, you don't have money for a tool, you got to get the stuff done, you can get it done. The worst part about this is the mess you have to clean up. And I mean the mess you have to clean up, because there is zip ties everywhere. So if this is a 16 valve and every single one of these takes 2 zip ties, and you don't break any, which I didn't, that's 32 zip ties you're going to need to have. I recommend these Grote brand ones, they're like 50 pounds. But you can also use the, I think there's a Walmart Hyper Tough ones that are like 50 pounds or more. Those work good too. I got to clean this stuff up and then we'll get to assembling things. Okay, I have my lost motion assemblies here. These are what these look like. These go in those weird looking holes. These are basically like little lifters, if you will. They've got little springs in them. I'm going to put oil in the chambers. I'm going to put oil all over them. I got to put them in. I'm going to continue to just do this. Clean, lubricate, put together. Okay. It's nice whenever you fill these holes up with oil and put the assemblies in there, they squirt out oil perfectly. That way you know that they are primed. Say like this hole here. So here's the lost motion assembly cavities here, here, and here. So I got these in. Whenever you take them and you got to put them in, when you drop them in, some will come out the sides, and when you push them in, whoa, that one was zealous. So when you push it, it kind of squirts some oil out. That'll prime those. Now I'm going to put lube for where the cam rides. When this goes on the car, I will lubricate the absolute hell out of that. But for right now, I'm just going to put oil where everything rides. I kind of rub this down with oil. Alright. Cams in. Get these races lined up here. Okay, now that we know that nothing is bent or warped, I can take this back off. Or can I? Now there's a couple spots on here on the edges that from the factory they tell you to put Honda Bond on. I believe it's here, 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 and here. I know on the Civics they make you do it. I'm gonna get my book out and double check here. That way I'm absolutely sure. Okay, so the rest of the assembly on the engine head I'm gonna do on the car because it's a lot easier and a lot lighter. These things are heavy. Like, I know the D series is like pretty heavy, but you can like walk around with it and it's not that big of a deal. This thing weighs like a Chevy engine head, like a V8 engine head, so I'm gonna actually wait to assemble it until I get the head onto the block, and then I'll put it together. It seems to be like the easiest way to do it on the Accords, and that'll give me plenty of room to work around. So we'll resume on this after we get done with the disassembly on the car.